Referred to as a cove of bounce light by Roger Deakins, you sometimes see the use of this technique in his work.
Deakins uses a technique in some of his films called the cove light, where he wraps the entire 180 degrees of the room in unbleached muslin.
Cove light is a lighting setup made famous by the incredible Roger Deakins, and ultimately what he does is just wrap a frame of fabric around the subject to get that smooth highlight to shadow roll off.
Deakins does it this way. He's bouncing this light off this sheet of muslin, lighting his face. That's it. That's all that's happening.
His most famous films. I'm talking about films like Sicario, Skyfall, No Country for Old Men, film after film. And that lighting setup is basically just a queenie bounced off unbleached muslin.
Cove light. What that is, essentially, you bounce a key light into a fabric and you also use the fade of the light to let it wrap around your subject.
Today we're going to take a look at cove lighting, which I don't think Roger Deakins necessarily invented, but he's definitely known for. He uses this technique a lot.
Oh, sorry, I was just searching our beloved YouTube. You know, the crazy thing is that I can't find any interview with the words cove lighting technique coming out of Roger's mouth. I have yet to find that interview. So by all means, if you find it, put it down in the comments section, because everything that I find is actually contradictory to any sort of technique when it comes to cinematography.
Because if you go on a set and you're just trying to copy someone, since the situation's not going to be exactly the same as whatever the other scene was that the other person lit, you're going to run into a wall.
Right, but it also kind of implies there's a technique that you can learn.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as a technique. There's not a rule. There's no such thing as a technique that you can learn. You could light it a million ways, but what do you want the audience to feel? That's the important thing.
I don't think there's anything worse than going in with this sort of set idea of what it should be, and then it's just like you're doing it like painting by numbers, you know, the old painting by numbers things that you used to do, you know. That's not fun, but it's also, I don't think, creatively interesting.
I think why this is a little bit of a problem is because for people like Roger Deakins to try to put him in a little box as if this is what he does every time, it almost, in my opinion, does the man a huge disservice. But not just him, but his body of work. The guy has contributed to 92 films, according to his IMDb. 92 movies he has contributed to in some form or way, and yet all of these YouTubers are referencing the same one or two movies. In fact, they all share the exact same behind-the-scenes photo from Revolutionary Road, which at this point is a fairly older movie. So you have to imagine this small handful of movies, like literally 3 to 4 movies tops, where they're referencing this so-called cove lighting, and yet Deakins' archive is 92 films. I think it's a dangerous thing to throw this kind of technique on him from a YouTuber standpoint, because if you are young, up and coming, and now these younger people may just think like, oh, this is the Roger Deakins way, this is all he does, when in fact that is not true at all.
For instance, there's a scene in Prisoners, right, where Hugh Jackman's character is stuck in a hole, right? It's a hole with a piece of wood over the top, you know. So how do you light that? How do you shoot sequences with that? So Danny and I were talking about it. He said, what if he's got a cigarette lighter? Great, okay. Now, if that had been film, I wouldn't have even gone there. But no, I mean, we basically shot this scene with a cigarette lighter. It was great. You know, I mean, it's simply as that. It's about taking those kind of risks.
The comical thing about this, or rather the ironic thing, one of these cove lighting tutorials have this quote in the tutorial, and this is actually quite humorous, but almost poetic in a way. This quote from Roger Deakins that this YouTuber put in the video where he's demonstrating the cove lighting technique. The quote says, "I think that studying another cinematographer's work in such detail is detrimental to personal discovery." I will admit, I myself have misused the word detrimental in the past. So perhaps this particular person also was confused by what detrimental means. But this is kind of why it's so poetically perfect that he's put this quote in the lighting tutorial where he's showing people how to make Roger Deakins Cove light, is because what Roger is saying here is that by studying another cinematographer's work, you are actually causing harm to your own personal discovery or your own cinematography creative journey, right? So clearly this person misunderstood what detrimental means. It's fine. We all misunderstand words sometimes, but I just had to call it out because it's so perfect to the topic of this video.
I just like the way I light, and I shot documentaries and I gradually learned lighting myself. I never went on a film set. I never watched anybody else work. I've never done that. I've actually never done that in my life. I wonder how they do work. I see a bit of this from time to time. But as I say, just in terms of technically what I would do on a set, it was very much a learning process that I would just find out really as I went along.
This is all for a reason, believe it or not. And the reason is to share my own personal experience with this. I don't know if all of you know this, but I started in the theater world. I was an actor for 20 years, and I started stepping behind the camera in 2017. So if I rewind back to 2017 and I think about what was I doing back in 2017 when I was first learning this, well, even though I had a master's and like 3 other college degrees, I still went back to film school. Formal education is important, but what I'm getting at here is that I was eating up and consuming every lighting tutorial I could find, such as these Cove lighting ones that I referenced at the top of this video, right? To the point where I even signed up way back then for Patrick O'Sullivan, aka the Wandering DP's Patreon. For about 3 or 4 years, I was just wanting to almost duplicate anytime I would see something in one of these lighting tutorials or workshops or Patreons or whatever I was in. And what I found myself in time and time again is backing myself into a corner and fighting against my own creativity. Again, like what Roger was talking about, like it was damaging my own personal journey. Whether you are conscious of it or not, you find yourself wanting to duplicate these things that you've learned, when the reality of the situation is that the scripts and the projects that I was working on, not all of them were in a position, or better yet, a location where any of those lighting techniques were possible, let alone even justifiable.
Okay, technically, how do you learn to light? And then you think about traditional lighting. And I think a lot of people still look at lighting in this way, which was front light, key light, backlight, fill light, kicker light. But that's not really the essence of lighting. That's the way of creating an image that you have in your head. So it's the image that you have in your head that's more important than the technique, if that makes sense. So I think the only way you really learn lighting is by experiencing light and life and the possibilities and the variations and the nuance of what light does.
It's fine to consume as much of this kind of content as you can in the beginning, but you have to prepare yourself at some point to be able to take the risk, like what Roger was talking about in the prisoners scene. You have to take these risks, and for us as growing and evolving as filmmakers or cinematographers or whatever you are, one of the risks is jumping off the bridge, cutting that tether line to whatever your education was, like whatever your school of thought was.
What's the script? What's the story? What's the scene? What's the individual shot you're shooting? And what do you want the audience to feel by what you do with the camera? That's what's important, not, key light, fill light, backlight.
Something that I forgot about in my cinematography journey was something that was instilled in me as an actor. And that was that the script will inform you of everything you need to know. And so now I've kind of paused myself on all the classes and tutorials for a couple of years now. I think it's been like 3 years since I watched any sort of lighting tutorial at all. And I've just kind of been focused more on the reality of the situation. What is the script telling me? What are we figuring out in our conversations with the director? What's the vision that the director is after? What's the vision I'm after if I am the director of photography on it? Or even if I'm the gaffer, there's still a vision there that we need to all uphold and collaborate on. Also, the location itself is going to dictate a lot of what we're capable of doing.
The kind of emotional connection I have with. I don't think I have a style. I've discovered ways of lighting that sort of work for me, Like I look at this lighting, it's great, but I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I'd do it a different way, but that's all personal. But that's not really a style. I don't think I have a naturalistic style. I hope I have a style that suits the project that I'm on. I mean, I walk on a film set on a new movie, and I think it feels like I've never done it before, like I'm learning, you know? So I don't think I've got a style. Any way a film looks is a product of the prep on that look, on that film, and how that sort of developed as we've gone along.
Roger Deakins actually does have a monograph book published, but he has said time and time again that photography, stills photography, specifically street photographers, are a huge inspiration to the work that he puts on the screen for all the movies that we love that were shot by him. And I also think it's important to note out that Deakins has said that one of his teachers was even a well-known street photographer.
It's just not to see what appeals to you. It's to see how different things affects you. You know, that's the thing. It's not just finding a technical solution. It's finding something that is more than just a superficial image. And that's kind of Todd Hilgo's work in a way that there's something there. I mean, they're really interesting, very simple images, but there's something there that's more than just the image. Most interesting photographers take photographs of seemingly unimportant objects, you know? William Eccleston, right, was one of the first really great color photographers. And he took loads of pictures of just old buildings and signs and stuff. But there's 4 or 5 pictures he took that are just stunning. What sense of sadness, of melancholy that he creates just through this image and the light, the harsh sunlight. It's really interesting. Look at the light, the difference between somebody like Alex Webb and the way they use light and color compared with, I don't know, Brassai or somebody who is using black and white, you know.
And not as a way to copy them, but to see what it makes you feel like.
No, I mean, you know, I don't think, no, I certainly couldn't copy Alex Webb if I wanted to, which I do. It would be very nice thought that you could copy somebody like that. But no, I mean, you look at, I don't know, James Natchway or, you know, Cartier-Bresson or somebody. I mean, you know, there's no way you're going to copy that work because it's very individual. It's personal to them. But what it is to look at it and see that the possibilities and then find out what you like and what you don't like. To develop your own way of seeing, really, which is a pretentious way of saying it, but I don't know any other way of saying it. To develop your eyesight.
If you really want to grow and evolve as an artist, as someone that one day will also be someone that a slew of people are making videos about, then I think what the goal here is you have to learn how to make yourself a true individual. And by being a true individual, then you will actually become a true artist. People will kind of turn their noses up at these photos and the art that they were creating for decades. It wasn't until they were old men that people finally decided that what they were doing actually truly was unique and was worthy of being called art. You know, it seems like you can never be an artist unless the right person wants to call it that. And I do think that is a real thing too. Once you have a couple years of this kind of formal education, if you will, or just, you know, observe the ways, observe the techniques, but at some point, you're going to have the cojones to ball that all up and throw it away and go, all right, now I'm going to do what I want to do and figure out, like, what is my unique vision here? What is my unique style?
Use your eye first to see what's around you and take pictures, and then try and create little images yourself.
Yeah,
and see what happens.
Absolutely. You're not going to learn from me or anybody else. And if it doesn't excite you, if going around with a camera and looking at light in the real world doesn't excite you, then I don't think there's much hope, really. That's how you learn, you know.